Coming up next, more detractor content and after that Dragon Ball Z, only on Toonami.
Has tipped me $1. Says, why are you so hard on Switch games like Tears of the Kingdom for being 30 frames per second and not having fantastic performance, but give Dragon's Dogma a free pass or softball them for their performance shortcomings? That's not the case at all. What am I saying? I'm saying the one negative about Dragon's Dogma is the frame rate, correct? And the reason that the frame rate of Dragon's Dogma is so low is because all these game devs are forced to make their games at 4K resolution. Sarah, Tears of the Kingdom does not run at 4K resolution. It runs on the Switch, which is a child's toy. That's why I'm hard on it. Nintendo needs to stop making children's toys if they want to be taken seriously. And if fanboys would just stop buying everything Nintendo puts out there in droves, Nintendo would improve. But instead, we let Nintendo get off with always being behind it, behind everyone else, right? Nintendo had the ability to have Tears of the Kingdom run beautifully if they actually made a machine that could run games beautifully. But they don't care. They make children's toys. And that's stupid because the games they put on there aren't representative of that. Tears of the Kingdom, imagine if Tears of the Kingdom ran at a full 1080p 60 frames per second smoothly the entirety of the game. Right? What a masterpiece it would be. But instead, it runs like dog shit. Literally the whole game, too. It's not just, oh, there's a couple times. Most of the game runs like dog shit. It looks terrible. Every time you have big combat, it chops up. You can't, it's shitty. And we keep giving them a pass. And I don't understand why. I just don't. I think Nintendo needs to be held to task and say, fucking make a console that can run the games. Your own first-party game devs can't make games for your console. That's stupid, right? That's not the case with Dragon's Dogma 2. Third-party company trying to push 4K graphics, which is the industry standard for anything except Nintendo, and now they're having frame rate issues. That's a shame, but that's not end-all be-all for me. With Tears of the Kingdom, it's literally a pain in the fucking ass to play it because the game's so choppy. It's an apples to oranges comparison, quite frankly. Okay. All right. Your opinion on Nintendo business practices? How is it they make money with archaic business practices? There's money to be made by porting exclusives and having a modern console because they're stuck in their ways and they have a fan base that supports them no matter what they do. They can make horrible missteps and still get the support. You know, the whole Wii U generation. No one liked that console. Even the Nintendo fans didn't like that console. Yet they bought 1 million little figurines to keep the company afloat during that time. They kept spending money. You know, it's kind of like Apple. I mean, take a look at Apple today. Is Apple really doing anything that innovative anymore? Very rarely. Their phone now is in its 800th iteration, and the phone is just stupid. Like, it's way overpriced. It doesn't make sense, but everyone runs out and buys it anyway, right? It's the same deal where you get so much of a following at some point as a company, a tech company, I would say, that since people literally will mindlessly spend money every iteration of what you do, you don't ever have to innovate. You don't have to listen to feedback. I mean, as soon as the Switch came out, ultimate feedback was, we want Joy-Cons that are repaired and fixed because they drift too much. We want more processing power. We want more hard drive storage, right? We want all this. Literally 2 years later, Nintendo came out with another version of the Switch that did none of those things. They completely ignored any requests from the fan base and just made another one with minor tweaks for more money. And everyone went and bought it. So why would Nintendo listen? Same thing with Apple. Why would Apple listen to feedback when people just spend money on this shit anyway? You know what I mean? You will. That is the worst consumer tactic. We don't like what a company's doing, but we keep spending money on it. Then they'll never change. You will never have that company improve for the better if you keep supporting their bad practices. Oh, let's see here. I received a $2 tip.
All right, so this idiot has me absolutely triggered regarding his moronic and repetitive rants against Nintendo. He's been saying the same crap about Nintendo's business practices for years now, and it's annoying because he's incredibly misinformed, per usual, and just a absolute moron when it comes to, basically his own standards and holding quote unquote Nintendo to task because he's a giant hypocrite. So like in the beginning of the video, he's obviously like talking about the Tears of the Kingdom and how it runs and all this. So DSP loves to isolate communities and insult communities by calling, Nintendo Switch a children's toy and criticizing Tears of the Kingdom. And, obviously, like, his playthrough showed that. The whole Zelda community made fun of him for being an absolute idiot. Regardless of how the game would have played, he would still have been bad at the game because he's too stupid to understand the mechanics. He complained about the lightning, complained about some of the puzzles. In my opinion, the performance of the system, the performance of the game, and I played a lot of Tears of the Kingdom, I don't think was that bad. I didn't really notice too much slowdown or stuttering, and if there was any, it wasn't significant enough to really notice, in my opinion. But this is, typical DSP fashion where he's just ranting and raving about how he knows better than the developers and he only has this one example out of all the first party Nintendo games that how they can't optimize for their own system. It's a stupid argument. Yes, if you prefer games at 60 FPS rather than 30 FPS, that's totally a valid opinion to have, but it's apparent regardless of what Nintendo does, DSP will continue to insult them because he does not like them and therefore continue to alienate a Nintendo fan base and then somehow be magically confused when people don't come out for his Nintendo playthroughs. But I think like really what makes me the angriest is when he goes off about the Wii U and the amiibo situation, specifically because like yes, the Wii U was a generally unpopular console, didn't sell that well, really only like the most diehard of diehard Nintendo fans bought it, and it didn't perform to what Nintendo expected. It was marketed improperly and there weren't that many games for it that drew people in. The thing that I find most annoying is then he goes and says, stuff about amiibos and being like, oh, well, everybody kept Nintendo afloat by just buying amiibos and that was like their contingency plan. I don't know like if he like memory holes this, but the 3DS was out at the same time and the 3DS was doing incredibly well. It's the stupidest, it's just his blindness to the actual industry. And just only sees Nintendo, especially at the time, as just being a home console manufacturer who then had to panic and sell amiibos. He had a 3DS. He had a DS. Like, how do you, like, forget this? That they had this other pillar propping them up. Like, yes, Nintendo, like, stumbled with the Wii U and the way that they handled that. But to just completely be like, oh, well, Nintendo fanboys are so ravenous that they'll just buy whatever, while completely ignoring another part of Nintendo's business that did incredibly well is the dumbest logic possible. And I don't know why no one points this out to him. This 3DS was doing very well while the Wii U was failing. And then, of course, he goes in to misrepresent like what the fans want by saying, 2 years after the Switch was released, people wanted a bigger hard drive space and this and that. He's referring to a rumor and a leak that had stated that there were going to be 2 different iterations of Switches coming out shortly after the launch. That's when we got the Switch Lite and then the upgraded Switch with the better battery life. So he goes off on different media outlets talking about how you shouldn't be using rumors and leaks for clickbait and stuff like that, but he uses a old rumor article about what the Nintendo fan base wanted. And it wasn't even until maybe about like year 4 when people really started talking about more powerful Switches. I think it was like a Bloomberg article that started talking about like the NVIDIA upscaling and stuff like that, where really like the more powerful Switch demand, at least from the YouTube space, kind of started coming from. And then like the obvious hypocrisy about like him talking about Apple when he owns an iPhone. He's spoken in the past how he needs a new iPhone, and there's a rumor because WWE champions will no longer be supported on his current iPhone, so he needs to upgrade. The man is just a joke and an idiot and misinformed. He loves to rail against Nintendo and act like they don't know what they're doing, yet it was only a few weeks ago, I believe, that it was reported that Nintendo is the richest company in Japan. So whether you love Nintendo's practices or you hate them, they're obviously doing something correct. At the end of the day, the dude's an idiot, he's a hypocrite, and will constantly live inside of his bubble regardless of what's actually happening in reality. Eat a dick, DSP.